Now, this is just...
Did he have a point?
No, he didn't have a point. But I can understand someone trying to point out hypocrisy, right?
He did have a point, in my opinion, but keep going.
No, salute. And I want you to, tell me after this. My thing with folks and comedians is that we get it. You're a comedian. You guys die under the hill. Y'all die on the hill of, yo, this is comedy. It's just a joke. It's just a joke. The same way you can say that it's just a joke, another person can say it wasn't funny. You cannot blame someone for not understanding how the joke is or not receiving it the way that you intended it to be sent. That's my real beef with this, because if Kendrick wanted to talk about, yo, don't talk about black women, whoop-de-whoop, all right, that's his opinion because he felt like the joke that you were making just wasn't funny. So you can hide behind the lines of, yeah, no, it's just comedy, it's just comedy. Okay, cool. Not everyone on this world shares the same humor and comedy. And I just hate that comedians die on that hill, because I've said things that I thought was super funny and it just doesn't land at the other party. Am I supposed to sit here and act all butthurt? It's like, no, man, I get it. Like, it just wasn't funny to you. There's different styles of comedy. There's different types of comedy. Not everybody has to understand your type of comedy just because you feel like you're super famous or that's not how comedy works.
But I feel like Andrew is saying like, like he is saying, oh, I just made a joke because I am a comedian and you don't have to find it funny. Like, I do feel like he is saying that though.
Is he?
And he's saying like, yeah, he is saying like, you don't have to find it funny, but I'm saying it because I'm a comedian and you rappers disrespect women all the time. I feel like that was the hill that he's standing on.
I think the example he used was outdated. I think the example he used was very exaggerated. Like, I think the example that he used was terrible, but I think the underlying point can and does have some truth to it, which is there has been plenty of times in our culture, and this is art. There's so many different lanes, and rap has grown so much that you can't just put everything in one umbrella, because the same example that you use saying bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks, you can also talk about the upliftment that rap and hip hop has led to over the test of time. Right?
But Kendrick would argue
the amount of time.
You're right. Kendrick would argue to Schulz that he tries to stay on that side of things.
And he does. Right?
So it's like, if you're in response to Kendrick Lamar.
But then if I'm Andrew, and again, I'm just being semantic because nobody is clean. We all have skeletons. We all, like, nobody is standing on the righteous side of history 100% of the time. Because then if I was somebody like Andrew Schulz, if I wanted to just make a point, I could also say, hey, Kendrick, you sat on stage with Dr. Dre.
And I said that up here.
Dr. Dre has some allegations. You did not turn down the Super Bowl when you were asked to be featured on a Dr. Dre set, right? Like, we do kind of pick and choose in certain areas. And so I do think there's points to be made. Again, I think that example was a little bit animated. I think Andrew, he is a comedian. I do think he does use that as a
crutch.
As a crutch.
For sure.
As a cape.
As a pass.
He does use that.
And comedians are very sensitive. I'm jealous of them. They can be sensitive and just die on the hill of, I'm a comedian. Because to me, right, if it was all about comedy to you, Andrew Schulz, you wouldn't have gotten that personal. I saw him respond to every tweet, kept going to this person and that person. I'm starting to realize, I'm like, oh, wait. Kendrick saying I done whacked out murals really affected you. So if you're a comedian, aren't you supposed to just be taking it for what it is? It's just a slippery slope. Now, let me say this though, right? I do understand what the two of you guys are saying, right? The underlying hypocrisy that can be under this, that's absolutely for sure. I can see that. My whole thing is just what I've been saying, where it's like, dog, not everything lands with everybody, and everyone is different.
Oh no, yeah, I was more so like trying to explain, like think out loud, not explain to you guys because I know you get it. But I was trying to like explain out loud to myself like what Andrew is saying and what his point is. I don't agree with him. Like I don't like side with him on this, because I think even the whole like I'm a comedian, I can say whatever I want. I'm not really the biggest fan of that either. Like when people say fucked up shit about like trans people, like different like communities that like can't really speak up for themselves, like people like I don't
I want to be a comedian.
I'm not like I'm not the biggest supporter of that. So Andrew using that, I'm not like, yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. I also think that it's fucked up, and like sometimes you're saying just like the worst shit ever and being like, I'm a comedian, it's fine. Like that I'm not saying
it's a cop.
Hold on. Can I finish?
Yes.
Like, I think all the comedy lovers, like, I see why they protect that and they keep that so close to their heart. But I'm saying when Andrew says a bunch of fucked up shit about Black people and it's not even funny and he just like that, I'm not really like supporting that right now. Like, you know?
I subscribe to the can rule,
which is
everybody can get it.
Yeah, everybody.
American, African, Dominican, Pecan. Mexican. Everybody can get jokes and stereotypes and be made fun of and lighthearted.
Absolutely.
Now, I understand the delivery is what really gets people. I don't live above, like, and y'all know me, and we have these internal conversations about some of my commentary where I can say things that is pretty offensive. Like, I understand that, and I know it, and it's not because I'm a dickhead or I'm insensitive. I just know that it does exist and it is a thing, and I'm not a comedian, so I can't stand behind, hey, I'm a comedian, I just said it. I'm more of like, no, this is what the world is and what it can be. And again, this joke in particular, right, I'm not defending his joke at all, right? Like, that's not what I'm doing. But what I will defend is art. And being able to get your art off. Because
I love that.
There's South Park, there's Family Guy,
I love that you said
there's
that.
The Simpsons, there's Bob's, all of these animated cartoons.
Yes.
You can say anything if you're animated and get it off. And nobody says anything. There's no outrage when Peter Griffin makes a joke about a handicapped Black man that's short, little people. Like, I can't even say what I really want to say. I gotta fucking do gymnastics just to describe something. Like, that's where I'm like, no, if it's art across the board, then let it just be art. Maybe you don't like him, the person, the delivery, the setting, but like, we could get some jokes off and we could say things, and if you're offended by it, you have that right to be offended, but people also have the right to say certain things, and that doesn't mean you have to agree. I don't agree with everything that's offensive, but I do agree with being able to have freedom of speech.
I agree with that too. I'm sorry, Reggie. I just want to respond to what he's saying because you are so right. This is art. Kendrick Lamar is not a comedian. His arena is rap. So the same way Andrew Schulz decides to respond to things through jokes or specials, rappers respond to things, if they're bothered or not bothered, via rap. So again, back to my whole thing is like, dog, if you're really a comedian and you understand what this comes with, and you also understand by art's terms that he's a rapper and rappers talk about things that happen in the world, I'm with you. I feel like it should be no qualm at all. So for me to see him just go at people over and over again on the timeline, I'm like, oh shit, this is actually affecting you. This isn't about comedy anymore. A real comedian would have took a joke. And I don't want to say like a real comedian. He is a real comedian. I'm just saying as a comedian naturally would, if their personal feelings aren't into it and it's solely about the art of comedy, he would understand the art of rap.
And I think he toes the line. Like, Andrew is in this very unique space where he has the Joe Rogan audience, right? He's known in that space with all of those comedians, right? Those group of guys. I guess it's Shane Gillis, Andrew Schulz, Theo Vaughn, all of those guys, the Joe Rogan tree, I'll say that. The Joe Rogan tree embraces Andrew Schulz, but he's one of the few, well, not even one of the few, he was introduced to a lot of people in our culture through Charlemagne and Guy Code, but mainly Charlemagne. So he's like this only person who really gets to exist in this area of Charlemagne the God, which is one of the biggest people in our culture when it comes from a media standpoint, the biggest radio personality in our culture. And then Joe Rogan, the biggest podcast, right? Who's also a comedian. He's in that gray area where he's going by nature to offend people at certain points because he's the only person who's on both sides of the fence in his position.
Great point. I never see Joe Rogan complain. I'm sure Joe Rogan has realized when he's been offensive, when people or the internet is against him. And what does he do? Acts like the comedian and professional host
like, I get it.
that he is. Yeah, I promise you that's my only qualm with this.
But that's because I don't think Joe Rogan is necessarily, and now again, maybe I shouldn't even use Joe Rogan. Let's use Shane Gillis.
Okay.
Let's use Shane Gillis. massive comedian.
Nah, he's funny.
He's hilarious.
He was on this show I watched.
But he also has bits, and I've seen him make jokes about race and racist jokes, right? Like that's what comedians do. But I think because I don't know Shane Gillis's stance on hip hop, or because I don't associate him in any way with hip hop, I don't think we put a microscope on Shane Gillis in a way that we do Andrew Schulz. Now, again, I'm not defending that joke. The joke was corny, I think. But what made that joke corny wasn't Andrew Schulz saying it. What made it corny was the two dudes. What's the podcast? The Shits and Gigs. What made that thing a thing was that they let it go.
Nah, it was corny when Andrew Schulz said it too.
Not Alex.
Oh,
Andrew said it.
No,
I think that's like, I'm trying to figure out like my point in my head right now, because I feel like I agree with, I'm not saying comedians can't say these offensive things. Like everyone can say, like Andrew can say these things. Free speech, he could say it. But I think I'm just like, it's not funny. Like you saying these fucked up things, these racist things. Like where is the joke? Like where is the witty joke in that?
And
like
that wasn't funny.
Because
that wasn't funny. I get that joke in particular is not funny.
I think that's my. I feel like I misrepresented what I said.
Like funny.
Yeah, it's like when he said the next clip, which we can play, but I just have to get to it. Like when he said like, oh, Kendrick, like people could have sex with you against your will. Like I'm just like, yes, you could say these fucked up that you are allowed to say. I'm not saying comedians can't say things. I'm not policing that, but it's like, what is funny about this? Like, what is funny about that?
Because we have heard racist jokes that were funny.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. If I love a racist joke. I love a racist joke.
That's why he's trying to act as if like we've never heard of this phenomenon of racist jokes.
But I feel like they just say
this wasn't funny.
Yeah, they just say fucked up things and say it was a joke, but it just, I'm like, what is the joke part of it? That's my point. Like
he mad it didn't land.
Like first of all, Kendrick's people and the gang affiliate, everybody, his security, they will kill me. They will destroy me. They'll find me in the street. They'll fucking cut me up. They'll shoot me. They'll do whatever. I'm not a tough guy. Y'all do. But just Kendrick, I would make love to him, and there's nothing he could do about it. Just Kendrick Lamar, I would make love to him, and the only thing that he could do is decide if it's consensual or not. That's the only thing he could do. If it's me and Kendrick, this is about physics. It's about physics. I don't even know if I'll get hard. But if we're in a cell, there's a chance that if we're in a cell and we're bored and we done tattooing each other, whatever you do in the cell, and we ran out of board games and we did all the other things, we cleaned everything, and I'm like, man, I might as well fuck you. There's nothing he could physically do to stop that.
So, like, if I'm Schulz, am I upset at the person who doesn't understand that joke? I still don't get it. I'm sure and again, there might be people out there that really thought that was funny.
Like his co-hosts.
They
were cracking up.
Salute to y'all. Word. But again, maybe sometimes you were just too in your own realm, right? Just too in your own world. It's just a bit sheltered. Yeah. And then when other people speak to other things you're doing, it's hard to kind of see. I think what this is, because I rehearing it again, I think the main issue with this is obviously the historical context between white men in a position of power and the history of how they exert their power, privilege against black people and black men in particular, right? Like, I think there's a power dynamic, and obviously history and slavery and all those things play a factor into why this was such a massive thing. I've said this on this podcast before. Andrew Schulz misses a lot on jokes. That I don't think that's funny, like personally, but it's not that I don't think it's funny because I'm super woke. It just wasn't funny.
It wasn't like a good joke.
I don't think it was funny. Yeah. I think that was just his way of responding. But when you have a podcast, when you record and speak as much as he does, as much as Joe Rogan does, Charlemagne, Joe Budden, all of these guys who do this for a living with large platforms, you're going to say things that come off and sound like this, just stupid, ignorant. And in the moment, you might feel like you're killing it. But when it goes out, you're not thinking about all of the variables that could happen. Like, do I think, based on this clip and based on like just knowing Schulz's content from a certain degree, do I think that he took into consideration the history of white men and black people? when he said this joke? No, I don't. Do I think when somebody who's not as familiar with him heard this, said, oh my God, this is the white man. They're doing it again. Do I think that triggers certain people in a way where now we're writing think pieces about a terrible joke? That's what I believe when I hear this shit. Like, it was just a shitty joke. It's a bad joke.